Emanators. One of the most interesting concepts in Honkai Star Rail because these are the most exceptionally chosen individuals in the entire Star Rail universe. There are quite a few known Emanators that we're going to break down in this video, but there's a lot of them that we don't know, but they are out there, confirmed. There's more Emanators than we know right now, and we're going to speculate on some possibilities because there's individuals in this game that fit the criteria of an Emanator on every checkmark. So if they're not an Emanator already, very likely will be in the future. We're going to be breaking all of that down in this video. But before we can go over all of that, what actually is an Emanator and how do they differ from a Pathstrider? That is something I see a lot. By the game's own definition, a Pathstrider draws power directly from an Aeon if you represent that ideal or concept. They are obviously immensely more powerful than regular mere mortals. They are typically referred to as the enforcer of the Aeon's will, but an Emanator is a term referring to those who have attained the permission directly from that Aeon to draw power from their chosen path, and depending on the Aeon, the circumstances can change. Obviously, each Aeon is different, but I guess an oversimplified way to explain this and something that everyone does in their day-to-day lives is like cooking. Let's say there's an Aeon of cooking and we all cook in some way. We're all Pathstriders of it. We can all draw that Aeon's power in some way. But for those special individuals like Gordon Ramsay, the Aeon would actually physically get in contact with them and make them an Emanator, granting them the best equipment, recipes, and making them most exceptional of that path, if that makes sense. Essentially, you're kind of chosen and directly singled out by that Aeon. And now with Penacony, we know that Enna of Order, a deceased or absorbed Aeon, you can still draw power from it, from that concept. Hope that clears it up. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. And let's start with the first Emanator we meet in the game, Herta, who is the 83rd member of the Genius Society and the master of the Herta space station, obviously. And we've only ever seen her in her puppet form that is actually molded after her younger self. She's kind of like, I guess, the Honkai Star Rail version of Pura from Breath of the Wild, who had a kid form due to experiments in the first game, but had her true adult form in the sequel. We haven't actually seen her true adult form, which will probably be a 5-star version of herself whenever that drops. And she's one of the co-founders of the simulated universe, one of her greatest projects, in order to research the mysteries and nature of the Aeons. Being an Emanator of Nous, of erudition, the Aeon of intelligence, and seeking knowledge. It is said that scientific research that would take normal researchers 10 to 20 years to actually figure out, or even a lifetime, Herta could figure out while multitasking. She is a true genius, and a genuine desire for knowledge, what made the Aeon of erudition gaze upon her and single her out. People across the cosmos rely on this information and knowledge from the Genius Society and the Intelligentsia Guild in order to figure out the mysteries of the universe, all the unanswered questions. Herta created the orbital space station hovering around a planet known as the Blue. Herta built this space station intended to serve as a personal museum for her curio collection and experiments, but has since become a hub for researchers who dedicate their lives to uncovering the mysteries of the universe. However, it did become a target for the full-scale Antimatter Legion invasion at the start of the game, which was successfully repelled by the Trailblazer with the power of the Stellaron inside them. We know that she created puppets of her younger self to help maintain and control the space station, but where is her real body? Does she have a real body, or is she like Skrullum? No doubt when we finally get her 5-star version, these questions will be answered. Definitely one of the most intriguing characters of the game. Another known Emanator of Nous of erudition is Xandar, who was supposedly the creator of this Aeon, and also the founder of the Genius Society. Quite the resume, apparently getting data from the imaginary tree, which is said to be the root and the hub of the multiverse of the entire Hoyoverse. That the cosmos are made up of the tree theory, suggesting that the galaxy is like an enormous tree with individual star systems serving as its leaves. According to the theory, only Aeons who draw their energy from the imaginary, and Emanators who are blessed by these Aeons personally, can travel through the space filled with imaginary energy. All things living connected to this imaginary tree and energy, through the universe, the star systems, and potentially the multiverse. A faction later known as the History Fictionologists worked diligently to try to misconstrue all of these information gathered by the Genius Society and the Aeon of Erudition. These are the only two Emanators known of this Aeon, but it is suggested that some members of the Intelligentsia Guild might be as well. Which brings us to one of the most popular and recent Emanators, Acheron or Raiden Mei. Someone that posed for a Galaxy Ranger for a while, but she walks the cosmos alone, carrying with her her long sword. And by all rights, Acheron shouldn't even exist as an Emanator. That should be impossible, but yet here we are. And it's unclear if any other Self-Annihilators are Emanators as well. Self-Annihilators being somebody who accidentally stepped into IX's shadow, and from that moment, lost their reason for existence. The despairing Self-Annihilators roam the universe in solitude. Most meet meaningless ends, embodying what the Aeon represents, that everything in the universe is meaningless, human beings worthless, in the eyes of the Aeons. But for Acheron, her real name is Raiden Mei, and she comes from a planet called Izumo, one of 2 planets circling a black sun. This black sun later would be revealed as the shadow of IX, the other planet being Takamagara. Most information on these ancient 2 planets is lost in history, but to summarize the backstory here, essentially Izumo was inhabited by humans, and Takamagara was populated by demonic beasts called Yazarozu no Kame, known just as the Kame. The Kame descended for the purpose of killing all of the inhabitants on Izumo. And once the population dwindled, their backs against the wall, they started turning the body of these Kame into swords. And they killed a being called the Sovereign of Revelation, which would be like an Ultra Giga Chad Kame beast, which is where Acheron's sword comes from. Acheron being the sole survivor known, and both of these planets would be consumed by IX. None exist anymore. It's still ambiguous how Acheron became an Emanator, since an Emanator is chosen by the Aeon and IX doesn't associate with anyone or anything, Aeon, mortals, or anything alike, or any living beings at all. Perhaps she just completely and utterly embodies that Aeon to the point where she was able to tap into that power on a deeper level. Most Aeons granting a specific amount of power to that Emanator they chose, but because she wasn't necessarily chosen, and IX is the black hole Aeon, perhaps she has a limitless bottomless power that she can draw from. And now she roams the cosmos, trying to put the Sin-Thirsters at rest, which we saw her do with Tiernan, a Galaxy Ranger from Penacony. People that embody an Aeon so aggressively that their spirit and soul lives on in anguish. Acheron is probably one of the biggest anomalies in this game, just as a character, but being an Emanator of IX to begin with. She is also the biggest trump card in Penacony because the family and the Dream Master can't control her. She's not affected by the manipulation. We know that Sunday wanted to manipulate everyone within the hive mind. Acheron is completely and utterly immune to this, which is why she was the biggest threat to Order and why they asked her to leave. Her powers at this point seem to be absolutely limitless. She very well might be the most powerful Emanator in this video, seeing as that we don't know the limits of the black hole Aeon that is nothingness, endlessness, and meaninglessness. The most mysterious Aeon to the Genius Society. And maybe that's for the best. All I can say is thank God that this Aeon is not hostile, or who knows if the universe would even stand a chance. Skara Cabez, who is the Star Crusher of the Aeon of Propagation, Tezera. Propagation being breeding or the reproduction of some sort of species. The action of widely spreading and promoting an idea, a theory, or life. Just a little Easter egg, but when you fight this boss, it actually keeps duplicating endlessly until you kill it. That is a subtle nod to its propagation. Also makes it more rage-inducing when fighting this thing for the first time. But this isn't the real Emanator, but rather a clone made by Ruin Mei. Why she decided to replicate an Emanator of propagation is beyond me. It's literally a giant bug, and this thing was an absolute menace during the Swarm disaster. And it's said to have a death ray that could fragment crystal bodies and shatter stars, which is why they call it the Star Crusher. Literally, the worst possible thing to reincarnate. But Ruin Mei was interested, calling this Emanator primitive and pure, in contrast to the other Emanators, likely due to it being from the Swarm, and Ruin Mei has a soft spot for propagation. Honestly, she belongs to that path. And although the original Skara Cabez was slain during the Swarm disaster along with Tazeroth, it is unknown how this happened. or who actually took the beast down. Although Tazeroth and all of the followers of propagation aren't evil, they're just procreating like insects do on a wider scale than we do. When you're dealing with giant bugs, I'd say leave it dead this time. Besides the Star Crusher Swarm King, there are currently no known other Emanators of propagation, but there definitely were other Emanators since the swarm was like throughout the galaxy. This was a massive catastrophe, and really well illustrated in the Firefly trailer, how menacing the swarm disaster actually was. And I actually think that this big ass bug they had to kill in that trailer was one of the Emanators possibly. It definitely seems like it anyways. But this just really showed how much of a nightmare the swarm was, and this is just in one area in the galaxy. This was universe-wide, and although the Star Crusher is the only known Emanator we know of, there is probably quite a few, considering propagation means reproducing and procreating. The more and more we learn about the swarm, and I do want to cover the swarm in its own video, the more nightmarish it seems. And to think Runmei thought it was a good idea to clone one of these. Absolutely insane. If I had a space station, I would never invite her back. Not a chance. Emanators of Aha. Honestly, trying to pinpoint this Aeon and its reasoning, or why it does what it does, is like trying to figure out why the Joker acts the way he does.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan? You know what I am? I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. You know, I just do things.
You're never going to have a straight answer. It's a lot more for curiosity, laughter, and chaos. Just doing things for the sake of doing things, with no real rhyme or reason. I mean, the game itself describes Aha as having no self-consciousness and utterly unpredictable, like when it made a random worm into an Emanator and then it died. This Aeon is unpredictable and randomly gives mortals the power of this path or makes random individuals Emanators, purely just to see what would happen. But as for specific Emanators, it's confirmed that there are Emanators of Aha within the Masked Fools and the Morning Actors. You might be thinking to yourself, well, the Morning Actors are directly opposed to the whole ideal of Aha and elation, advocating for abstinence and penance to dilute the temptation of elation. That life is full of ups and downs. That agony makes people mature. Literally the opposite of the Morning Actors, and the very existence of this Aeon. So, what does Aha do? In typical fashion, he literally makes these people Emanators out of irony, to torture them and torment them. Because they hate him so much, he literally makes them Emanators, just out of a laugh and spite, kinda like how Blade has immortality from the abundance, and he literally despises the abundance. It's kinda like the same thing. Besides that random worm, there's none that are confirmed, but I have a theory. I think if somebody was the best candidate to be a Emanator of Aha, I think it's Sampo. Mainly because he broke the fourth wall with us after Belobog. And he could clearly still have a 5-star skin at some point. I think he would be a great candidate for an Emanator. He just has that vibe. But that is all we know about this Aeon for now, when it comes to Emanators. The next two Aeons, we're going to talk about their Emanators, Destruction and the Hunt. Because the way they make Emanators, these two Aeons, it's very similar. They almost have like a formal military, and the Emanators acting like the generals of that military, and then the Aeon is like the commander or king. It's sort of a same format. We'll start with Destruction. Destruction actually has a good handful of Emanators, known as Lord Ravengers. There is Selenova, Iron Tomb, which sounds like the coolest one to me, Phantilia, Sun Devourer, one unnamed Lord Ravenger that's said to be very smart and cunning, another unnamed Lord Ravenger that is associated with antimatter, Zephyro, and then the last one, Zulo, who was killed in that flashback with Acheron and Tiernan. A nameless who joined the Galaxy Rangers killed this Emanator of Destruction, this Lord Ravenger, but a lot of them died in the process. Let's start with Phantilia because we actually already kicked her ass and we know the most about her. Phantilia is a Helibos, a species that don't take any shape but are made up of pure energy, capable of forming or taking physical bodies or shapes, usually inspired by different experiences or emotions that cause them to take different shapes or forms. And these beings are ancient enemies of the Xianzhou Alliance, and a very rare species among the denizens of abundance. Because this species doesn't take an actual form but is just energy, they can possess and infiltrate mortals and take over their bodies, which we saw her take Ting Yuan's body over, which is actually terrifying to think about because then the mortals will subconsciously do self-harm. They'll overeat drastically, mutilate themselves, and do things to try to get the Helibus out of their body, sometimes to no avail. And being that she has such a unique form of destruction, she gained the gaze of Nanook and was given the title of Lord Ravager. Phantilia the Undying, being the perfect personification of both life, being an immortal of abundance, and death, being an emanator of destruction. And the Nameless were actually even aware of her prior to her infiltration of the Xianzhou Luofu. Being that she was one of the strongest Shapeless, loved causing destruction from internal collapse within, Phantilia has stolen and killed many people through taking bodies, but hopes to obtain an indestructible body at some point. So far in the game, it's said that she's caused insurmountable chaos on about 122 planets so far, infiltrating the Luofu disguised as Tingyan with the purpose of destroying the Luofu, and she provided the members of Sanctus Medicus with a Stellaron and told them that the Ambrosial Arbor would bestow upon them undying bodies once it was revived. She arranged for the Stellaron to be brought aboard the Xianzhou by somebody. After Don Shu was defeated by the Astral Express, she begged Phantilia to uphold their deal, but Phantilia ignored this request, instead becoming disgusted as her identity was compromised and she was forced to shed her disguise, before sending a large group of Antimatter Legion foot soldiers. She then headed to the roots of the Arbor and took control of its power, and a body created by the Arbor. After the Trailblazers found her, a battle ensued, where she tried to convert Jing Yuan into a member of the Antimatter Legion, being that it would put the Luofu into chaos, and him having Emanator level powers of the Hunt. We'll get into that in a second. Actually baited her into doing this, and with Dong Heng's help, was able to defeat her and resist her powers. Ultimately, Phantilia was defeated, however she was not killed, as she is a denizen of abundance and her name is the Undying. So much like Blade, it's going to take something pretty exceptional to kill her. Also, Jing Yuan says that if she was actually focused more on the fighting itself, that she actually probably would have won, but she got distracted with trying to manipulate and torment. Her method of destroying from within and corrupting the soul and destroying the body is actually terrifying. Not to mention she can infiltrate an entire nation and cause such discourse. If she were to infiltrate the right person, it would be catastrophic, which is why she tried to infiltrate Jing Yuan to begin with. This would have put the entire Luofu into complete catastrophe. Her method of destruction, though, is pretty interesting, and it's easy to see why Nanook took interest in her. I'm sure the game will try to spend more time focusing on the other Lord Ravengers as this game continues and the main story goes on, but we'll probably see her again at some point. Selenova, another Lord Ravager, is said to be a frontline general of Nanook, her troops spreading across the galaxy, and have actually come in conflict with the Xianzhou ships. But funny enough, she actually requested a ceasefire with the Xianzhou Alliance in the year 5700 of the star calendar, and actually requested a combined attack on the homeworld of Wing Weavers. Wing Weavers being a species of feathered humanoid people and a branch of the denizens of abundance. Interesting. And these Wing Weavers actually have an emanator amongst them as well called Wing Peerer, who is an emanator of abundance. Interesting. So a Lord Ravager, Selenova, actually made a deal with the Alliance to gang up on the abundance and this species. Other than that, we don't actually know much about her, but the fact that she's on the front lines and a general makes me think that she'll be complete opposite of Phantilia, much more of a warrior type than behind the scenes. Then we have another Lord Ravager, Zephyro, who is described as a one-man army. With a passion for violent destruction, Zephyro is obsessed with raw power and the beauty of things in the moment, just as they are destroyed. Interesting. You know, I can actually relate to that. It is cool to watch a wrecking ball destroy a building. I think the difference is most people would hope that that building is empty. Not the members of Destruction, though. That's the difference. But I can appreciate where he's coming from. Watching something explode like a car from a distance is kind of cool to watch. I think we can all relate to that. This Lord Ravager also has the nickname Scorching Flare and has an extreme passion for doomsday scenarios. Last spotted in the Tianuan galaxy according to the morning actors. That galaxy has now been completely destroyed. Not good, not good. That's all we really know about this Lord Ravager. He sounds terrifying, and he sounds kind of like Thanos to me. That's the vibe I get, but being described as a one-man army destroying a galaxy already, that is definitely nothing to scoff at. Yet another Lord Ravager that's very different from Phantilia. The next Lord Ravager, Iron Tomb, who sounds the coolest to me. Apparently this Emanator's forte or specialty is attacking technologically advanced civilizations. All survivors report experiencing an intellectual collapse, technology malfunctions, and AI defenses becoming paralyzed or attacking their allies. Iron Tomb attacked the Baranza Forge, an industrial planet, and completely neutralized it. Okay, so he's like a giant MP going off in our civilization. Kinda like Y2K, I guess. He would shut down our central banks, our power grids and our systems, our satellites, our communications, and watch it just go to shit. Obviously, this can only really happen on technologically advanced civilizations, hence why that's his specialty. Definitely a unique type of destruction. We saw what happened on Earth with the pandemic. Shutting down the world for a little bit was a nightmare. I can just imagine if you shut down all the grids, all the AI, all the technology, it would be complete and utter anarchy. I wonder if Silver Wolf's home planet will become a target for Iron Tomb, or the Telligenzia Guild, Pure Point from the IPC's headquarters, or even the Genius Society. There's a lot of really great targets for this Lord Ravager, so I am very intrigued to see Iron Tomb pop up in the game. There is an unnamed Ravager that's associated with a planet that has been converted to antimatter. Perhaps a survivor of that planet appreciated the destruction and was given the title of Lord Ravager, and now they're actually part of the Antimatter Legion itself. An unnamed Lord Ravager is also said to be a great chess player, so I'm assuming it's probably somebody from the Intelligentsia Guild, or maybe the Enigmata, somebody that's a little bit more behind the scenes. Then we have Sun Devourer, and then we have the Emanator and Lord Ravager of Destruction called Sun Devourer. The Intelligentsia Guild stated that a third of the stars in the Ivana chain were extinguished by an unknown force over nearly 300 years ago. The planets around these stars, deprived of their light and left in total darkness, were later attacked and destroyed by the Antimatter Legion. It was the survivors of the Ivana star system who nicknamed the Lord Ravager responsible for this event Sun Devourer. So he turned the star system into total darkness before he destroyed everything. What a savage. And then of course we have Zulo, who is a former Lord Ravager that was killed by the Galaxy Rangers and a nameless Tiernan, and after his death was succeeded by Silanova. How they actually killed this Lord Ravager was pretty interesting. The Galaxy Rangers were outmatched, so they actually manipulated the surviving members of the Swarm, making use of their lack of intelligence to their advantage and herding them towards his feet. Before this mission, they saved the life of Tiernan, a nameless who was on Penacony, who participated in saving Penacony from the Swarm, and helped Penacony's independence from the IPC. And this successful assassination marked the Galaxy Rangers' rise to fame, which they would use to continue their exploits across the universe. As stated, Zulo's death was succeeded by Silanova, and that is all the known Emanators of the Destruction. Now switching over to the Hunt. This one is kind of interesting because I know this is going to stir up some controversy no matter what I say. There really isn't any confirmed Emanators, but it's pretty heavily implied that all the generals of the Xianzhou are Emanators of the Hunt. Welt claims that the 7 generals are legitimately equal ground with the Lord Ravagers due to the blessings of that Aeon. And if you're receiving blessings from that Aeon, by definition, and by the game's own terms, that is basically an Emanator. You're getting singled out by the Aeon. You're not just drawing from the pool of energy represented by that Aeon anymore, you're actually being singled out. And they are referred to as generals of the Hunt as well. I honestly think maybe the Hunt, that entire path and everything associated with it, they just word things differently because it's, like I said, it's more of a military formed Aeon with its troops. But again, it's not confirmed. Besides that, I would even assume that there are at least 1 or 2 Galaxy Rangers that might be an Emanator. I think it's a great possibility. We don't really know much about the Galaxy Rangers. They just started popping up in the story, but the Arbiter Generals are definitely a candidate and very heavily implied to be Emanators, so we will talk about them. By starting with the most known one, Jin Yuan, being the general that presides over the Xianzhou Luofu, the Luofu being one of the 6 flagships, and all of the other generals presiding over the other flagships. But the Luofu's the one we know the most about, and a place we can travel to, who has actually been a general of the Luofu for centuries, being a veteran among the generals, sometimes even being named lazy. But it's actually due to his wisdom and attention to detail. You know, it's like that old saying, it's better to work smart than heart with this vast age and wisdom. Maybe that's why he's following the path of erudition as a playable character. As discussed with Fantilia earlier in the video, he was able to come up with a way to defeat a Lord Ravager that can possess the body and is linked with both the destruction and the abundance. Having to deal with a Lord Ravager that is quite literally immortal and has the blessing of Nanook is no minor feat. He was also part of the most famous group in the entire Xianzhou history and was one of the 5 heroes of the High Cloud Quintet that fought and won many famous battles together, taking down many groups and leaders that follow the abundance, and was a big part in taking down Shahu, who is an emanator of abundance. Obviously, we know when Dongfeng went rogue, committed one of the 10 sins to try to revive one of their friends, using body parts of the Emanator of Abundance they had killed, and dragged Blade along with him. The High Cloud Quintet would eventually split and go their separate ways, a few of them even being banished. As already stated, Jing Yuan's quite old. His parents many years ago actually hoped he'd be more of a scholar, but the young boy grabbed a toy sword when he was young, and he never looked back. And because his family actually wanted him to be a scholar and join the Realm Keeping Commission, he deliberately joined the Cloud Knights in the first place just to escape the life that his family wanted for him. Being how naturally skilled he was in battle, proving himself very early on in his career, and how level-headed and quick-witted he was, as anyone would expect, he rose the ranks quite fast. Until he got so good he was invited by Jinglu to form a team. And this is how the High Cloud Quintet would actually begin. No matter where we are in the game or in the galaxy, we can always count on this general for support in a time of crisis like we've seen in Penacony. Even if it was a fake ending, he's always got our backs. Now I know I'm going to butcher the rest of these names, but I'll still try to pronounce them, starting with what I would call Yu Wu. Yu Wu, general of a flagship, the Xianzhou Shuling, Zhongquan, is described as mighty and powerful, that presides over the Xianzhou Fangu, which is another flagship, Alguan, who is the general described as cautious and sophisticated. Such a good strategist that they are often referred to as a seer. The Xianzhou Yukui ship, Huiyan, the master of the Zuming Artisanship Commission, who's described as strong and righteous, who is said also to be the longest lived human aboard the Xianzhou, and actually has a granddaughter learning swordsmanship to possibly join the Cloud Knights. This Arbiter General was actually the master of Blade in his former life and alias when he was still in the High Cloud Quintet. Fix Xiao, that presides over the Xianzhou Yaoqing ship, referred to sometimes as the Madam General, and she thinks Jin Yuan is not efficient or as reliable as she is, but she is described as very fierce and swift, dealing with threats and taking actions quickly. Her ship, and anyone working under her, aggressively pursue the abominations of the abundance without hesitation, which has given her many victories against abomination forces. And that's going to pretty much wrap up the hunt, as we don't know any other emanators of this path. But let's talk about Fully, the Path of Remembrance, who basically wants to record all of history in case the destruction of the universe, that what was will be remembered. And the main emanators of this path are basically the Garden of Recollection and the Memo Keepers, Black Swan being one of them. Yes, according to the game, she is an emanator. There are also some other emanators known as Lark, who we know nothing about, Roy Hampton, who is now deceased, who was another Memo Keeper, Zahili, and someone known as the Messenger, the NPC that we see on the Astral Express, that always sits next to the Forgotten Hall mirror. This individual is actually technically an emanator. It is not stated whether the Cremators or any of them are actually emanators, Cremators being rogue members of the Remembrance, but I do really think, and I do want to talk about this in another video, I think the Constance of Dalia is definitely a Cremator, a rogue Memo Keeper. But let's obviously talk about the one we know about the most, Black Swan. Somebody that's known to bear a warm smile and is willing to patiently heed the words of another and uses their words as a pretext to enter memories and gain a comprehension over the flow of all information. Black Swan, like many Memo Keepers, travel to numerous planets collecting the memories of each city they encounter. They are careful not to leave any trace of their presence, ensuring that nobody remembers them unless they come across someone with the potential to become a Memo Keeper, whom they then take away from the city into the vast expanse of the stars. Memo Keepers are also said to give up their mortal bodies and actually just take the shape that they see fit. They can also decide who gets to see them and who doesn't. But fun fact, in this moment, Sam, now known as Firefly, was able to see Black Swan anyway, which actually caught her by surprise. Little is known about Black Swan's origins, although before she gave up her mortal body, she did have a family and a mother who describes her as always being curious about the beginnings and origins of things, which I guess always made her suited to be a memo keeper. Unfortunately though, her mother was affected with amnesia, so she struggled and forgot a lot of things, making it difficult for her to recognize her own family, and even her own daughter, which would make Black Swan read from a diary often to her mother to help her remember things about herself, her life, and her family. Towards the end, her amnesia was so bad, besides her mother being physically present, she was no longer with them, but in a realm of consciousness on her own. Black Swan would actually stay by her mother's side until the end of her life, realizing that her mother has been fading away as her memories became fragmented. If her own memories of her mother were to ever become blurred as well, her mother would not only completely slip away from her, but would never even have existed in the cosmos and the universe. And this would be the catalyst, and when she would fully comprehend the importance of memory, preserving information, recording it, and cherishing it, making her fully embody the remembrance and Foley's will, and thus she would become a memo keeper herself. Numerous memo keepers have ventured into Penacony only to discover it is a mere illusionary image dancing upon the water's surface. Being a memo keeper is what allows her to actually MacGyver herself through the dreamscape while keeping somewhat of her memory and mind intact. This is why she's immune, along with Acheron, to the family's shenanigans through the dreamscape, and helping us see that even the minute we stepped into Penacony, we were always in Enna's dream, and Black Swan being the main reason we were able to awaken from that illusion. No doubt we will see Black Swan pop in and out of the story, but I wonder if she will clash with the Constance, who is more than likely a cremator and a corrupt memo keeper. I guess only time will tell. Next, we're going to talk about the Emanators of Claypoth, the Aeon of Preservation, and actually one of the oldest Aeons in the game. And there are only 2 known Emanators of this Aeon, but it's heavily implied there's quite a few more. Seeing as that it is an old Aeon, that doesn't surprise me. There are some unnamed, unspecified members of the IPC, no doubt some of the other board members, but the 2 known Emanators, one of them being Diamond, who's the leader of the 10 Stonehearts, a P47 rank, and the board of directors and head of the Strategic Investment Department. He is responsible for sending his 10 Stonehearts to various struggling planets, seeing a long-term investment, and tries to coerce and intimidate struggling planets and people to conceding to the IPC. It's unspecified how powerful he really is, but the 10 Stonehearts are really no joke, and they get extra power from their cornerstones. These cornerstones given to them all by Diamond himself, using his Emanator power to create them. No doubt we will learn lots more about this Emanator in 4.3, when Jade shows up in Penacony, a planet that the IPC used to own, but lost control and now they're trying to get it back. The other board member of the IPC who we know as an Emanator of Preservation is Taravan Kane, who is the head of the Building Material Logistics Department and a P48 rank. Known as a very unsympathetic and uncompromising person, he will prioritize market dynamics over fairness or affordability for others, and it's even questioned if he really embraces the preservation, seeing as that he bypasses a lot of the department's main goals. So I wonder if we'll learn that this man is a fraud, but it's really hard to say. Mythos of the Enigmata. This Aeon has a group of followers called the History Fictionologists, a group of people dedicated to fabricating and destroying or erasing the histories of the cosmos. With the Enigmata as their sole philosophy, they are determined to shroud the universe in mystery. This group and Aeon in particular confuse a lot of people, myself included, because it's hard to see what the goal is here, and a very incredibly oversimplification, I guess to describe it is sometimes half-truths are more beneficial for the greater good, like how you kind of lie to your kids that Santa Claus exists for a while because they enjoy it. That's kind of the premise, and this Aeon obviously being directly opposed to Nowzaver Edition and the Genius Society who want to discover and solve everything. This group sort of try to make sure that that doesn't happen, or at least make it harder to decipher. Much like the Memo Keepers, it's said that each one of these members is an emanator of this Aeon. One member that we do know, Gallagher, whom we met on Penacony, who was a security officer of the Bloodhound family. Apparently he's very good at making drinks as well. You know, the entire point of Gallagher and the Enigmata is that everything is construed. Gallagher himself is made up of a bunch of different family members to misconstrue and blend in, hide in plain sight. So naturally his backstory is very similar. It's very shrouded in mystery, and that is perfectly intentional. Either way, his entire purpose was to liberate Penacony from the family, and he's the one that actually invited all these crazy factions there. The IPC, the Memo Keepers, the Annihilation Gang before Acheron killed Duke Inferno and took his invitation, the Masked Fools. He really just invited all these people here, forging the family's signature under it as a formal invitation from the family, in order for all these factions to actually get here and start causing chaos, and start digging into the mysteries of Penacony and the new prison that it has become. Gallagher was also a great friend to the Watchmaker, Mikhail, and after succeeding, Mikhail's wishes would cease to exist. I don't know of any other Emanators specifically, but I'm sure we'll meet more history fictionologists along the way. While we're on the topic of Penacony, let's cover 2 other Aeons and their Emanators. Let's start with Harmony, and the only Emanators even mentioned with Harmony are associated with the family. Nowhere else have we heard of Emanators of this Aeon. But the best possible candidate to be a current or future Emanator of this Aeon is Robin. By every single metric, she is the best candidate, and if she isn't an Emanator already, she will definitely be one in the future, there's no doubt about it, because the family itself has already been singled out by the Harmony, and it's even debated, much like how every single Memo Keeper or history fictionologists are all Emanators. It's sort of implied as well that every single family member is an Emanator of Harmony, so that is a possibility, but it doesn't actually outright say it. It's said through Shipe of Harmony. Harmonic strings do not follow any specific individual, but are facets of Shipe, and can assume the form of any family member when necessary. And certain family members possessing the power to be a tuner of the harmonic strings. Such individuals are called chord masters. Elenev, the commander of the Eternal Centurion, Dominicus, the wisher of the harmonious choir, Constantina, the singer of the Panacoustic Theater, Beatrice, the merrymaker of the blissful ball. These are the 4 main harmonic strings, and only chord masters can utilize them, directly connecting with this Aeon. Robin was meant to be the chord master of the harmonious choir. Sunday usurped it using order. Speaking of order, we might as well talk about this Aeon and its potential Emanators as well, while we're on the topic of harmony. During the Charmony Festival, the family members would gather to the theater to welcome the harmonious choir that blesses Penacony with everlasting peace. Like mentioned already, Robin was tasked with being the chord master, but we know that Sunday usurped the choir. The shared wishes of harmonious embodiment through the Charmony Festival had fallen into Anna's dream, transforming everyone equally into puppets of that Aeon. Due to the interference of order, we see at the end of the boss fight when he switches forms and he takes on a different appearance. This is not normal. Using the harmonious choir as a foundation, the power of order and harmony intertwined to form an embryo of philosophy, a shell of an egg within which a newborn god slumbers. But he was defeated by the Astral Express crew, Robin, some Galaxy Rangers, and everyone who wished to be awakened from this dream and this prison. So yeah, I would say anyone within the family, past or present, and it doesn't matter which of the 5 great lineages they come from, if they are able to become a chord master, then by the game's own definition they should be an Emanator. But would that make Sunday an Emanator as well? And would he be an Emanator of Anna, or would he be an Emanator of a brand new Aeon that hasn't even been born yet before we killed the egg that would be that new Aeon? Kind of a weird situation. Also, I would say because Harmony isn't a very old Aeon and only rose into Aeonhood when it actually absorbed Anna of Order back during the Swarm disaster, there probably isn't a bunch of unknown Emanators out there for Harmony. But as for Order, Order had control over different planets and star systems before the Swarm disaster even happened. So I think it's possible that there were Emanators out there of Order long ago. Maybe they still have some, because we know that people can draw power from paths that have been killed or absorbed apparently. Could there be other Emanators out there of Order That would be interesting, but I think the best candidate that we have in the game right now is either Sunday or the Dream Master, who actually groomed Sunday to follow this path of order to begin with. Either way, the whole situation is very interesting, and I'm wondering how it's going to unfold. But that is all we really know about these two Aeons and possible Emanators. The harmonic strings is what the game information alludes to when it talks about Emanators of Harmony, and because Sunday and Robin can be chord masters, I think they qualify. But again, I'll leave that up for debate for now. Also, a side interesting note, and I do want to talk about this again in this video that I'm making soon. Apparently this guy has the ability to be a tuner of the harmonic strings as well, very interesting. And Ifrit did say he wanted him to challenge the harmony. I'm very curious to see who this guy is. Maybe he's an ex-family member? You'll have to watch the video to find out. The Emanators of Abundance. There are some unspecified and unnamed Emanators of the Denizens of Abundance, but only two that we know by name. Wingpeerer, who was mentioned earlier in the video, one of the Lord Ravengers teamed up with the Alliance, had a temporary truce to their fighting to gang up on this feathered humanoid species was an Emanator, and that's all we really know. The other Emanator being Shahu, who is actually the leader of the Denizens of Abundance, and as discussed earlier in the video, came into contact and conflict with the Xianzhou Alliance on many occasions. Apparently this Emanator took the form of a strange-looking tree with 1,000 faces, whose branches penetrated deep into the earth, having conflicts with multiple Arbiter Generals. This Emanator also established the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus, who worked with Phantilia, described earlier in the video, and was its first master. And despite this Emanator being a menace, it's said that it actually revived a dead planet. But unfortunately, that dead planet it revived ended up ransacking one of the 9 flagships of the Xianzhou and totally just destroyed and devoured it. And apparently around 700 years ago, the High Cloud Quintet saved another flagship from the Denizens of Abundance invasion led by Shahu, but this Emanator wasn't actually present at that time, but he did try to invade the La Fu, the main flagship that we're familiar with. And Phantilia apparently watching this all play out. Beiheng, who was a Foxian member of the High Cloud Quintet and a legendary renowned pilot, would basically kamikaze into Shahu himself and kill this Emanator allegedly. She would die in this process. Dongfeng and Blade would try to resurrect their fallen comrade, but this went terribly because they tried to use the Emanator Shahu's body parts to resurrect their friend. The Foxian Beiheng turned into a monster, they had to kill her again, and during this whole process, Blade kind of transformed himself into an abomination. Now he's immortal, he hates the abundance, and now he has powers of the abundance, so he wants to die. And now there are no records or traces of this Emanator. Some presume he's imprisoned in the Shackle prison, kept at the very bottom level. But if he is an Emanator of Abundance, can he truly be killed? I guess we'll have to find out. Who really knows for sure, but I doubt it. Probably one of the strongest Aeons, Ho-Oh, who represents equilibrium. This Aeon and their Emanators influenced the universe superstitiously, trying to achieve an ideal balance. And it's said that there are some Emanators of this Aeon amongst the Arbitrators, and the Arbitrators act accordingly to the commands of this Aeon. And in many worlds and galaxies, these Arbitrators are mistaken for gods. But it's unspecific who actually is an Emanator and if all Arbitrators are Emanators. Vidrilla, the Aeon of Beauty, that is presumed deceased prior to the game's events. Interesting. It's said that this Aeon actually takes the shape of whatever mortal or individual sees it and what they think is most beautiful. So how would somebody even know if this Aeon is dead? I don't know. But there's 2 main factions that we know of that follow this Aeon even after it's presumed gone, the Mirror Holders and the Knights of Beauty. Both factions are speculated to have Emanators within, further reinforcing the idea that Sunday or the Dream Master could potentially be an Emanator of Order, even if that Aeon is gone. You can kill the Aeon, but you can't kill the ideal or path. And that goes for the next Aeon we're going to talk about as well, Akavili the Trailblaze Aeon. And this Aeon mysteriously disappeared one day, leaving a group of loyal Nameless to carry on what they had started and continue exploring the unknown. The Express broke down for a while till Himiko discovered and repaired it. So this is kind of open to speculation. Is the main MC a reincarnation or this Aeon in disguise? Or is our main MC an Emanator of the Trailblaze? Is Pom Pom this Aeon's new form, hiding in plain sight? Or an Emanator of this Aeon? Or maybe even Himiko? Does Himiko have the potential? There are so many possibilities when talking about this Aeon, even the main MC from Genshin Impact, the Travelers, sort of embody this Aeon's will perfectly. But as for Emanators that have been singled out by Akavili in the past or in the present if it's still alive, we can literally only speculate. Which brings us to more speculation: Ouroboros of Veracity and its Emanators. This Aeon is from a species called the Leviathans, an ancient Aeon known as the Devourer of Worlds. They have an endless sensation for devouring things, devouring worlds, and an endless bottomless pit of hunger. Other than past Leviathans that were probably Emanators of this Aeon, I would say the best candidate that we know of is probably the all-devouring Narwhal from Genshin Impact. This thing is specifically stated to not be from Teyvat. It can travel between worlds and just seeks to devour everything, mindlessly. Obviously this is speculation, but it's the best candidate that I could see for this Aeon that we know of. Then we have Long the Permanence, a deceased ancient Aeon who presides over the path of permanence, that appeared in the form of a giant dragon, leaving behind a large number of descendants known as Scions. So naturally, right off the bat, I would assume that the closest thing that this Aeon has to Emanators are his Scions and his descendants. I guess that's a different type of way of being singled out by an Aeon. Most of these Scions found within the Shanzhou Alliance these days, and are a long-life humanoid species with dragon-like features that have a self-reincarnating process. I would assume out of all of Long's Scions out there, there's gotta be a couple Emanators. Being that they're all descendants, I'm sure. But again, we can only speculate. And then more with the speculation, in the last Aeon I want to cover, Terminus the Finality. And being that this Aeon can move in time, I'm wondering if it's the oldest or the youngest Aeon. Probably traveled to the future, seen all of the events of the game, the entire universe and its end, traveled to the beginning, and watched everything unfold. This might just be the most powerful Aeon in existence. There is one solid candidate to be an Emanator of this Aeon, that being Elio, the leader of the Stellaron Hunters who has the power of foresight and has scripts to guide his hunters. Can literally see what's going to happen. It's also said that Terminus has prophecies that it tells its loyal followers that will be fulfilled. That sounds exactly like what Elio does with his scripts. There are also two other groups that follow this Aeon, the Omen Vanguards and the Creed Exque. The Omen Vanguards wanting to draw prophecies from Terminus's obscure words and cryptic messaging and believe that this Aeon represents the end of the universe. The Creed Exque, this group literally just want to witness this Aeon, see it in its glory, just ooh and ah about it. But as far as I know, Elio is the best candidate to be associated with this Aeon and a potential Emanator. And I'll just have some closing remarks before I wrap up the video. Every Aeon is different, which means that the Emanators that they have will be different as well. When it comes to power level, their influence, and how much of an impact they have on the universe or the worlds around them, it's gonna vary greatly. I would also like to say that there's going to be a lot of other Emanators that we both don't know about or haven't been picked yet. Anyone at any given time can be singled out by one of these Aeons and turned into an Emanator. And Emanators are one of the coolest concepts of this game, so I hope the game explores this further. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let me know any other potential Emanators I might have missed. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.